Hello fellow artists of blue and welcome to my channel and welcome to another installment without my face again. Normal service will soon be resumed. We are just moving to a new studio, which is very exciting but also painful. With that aside, welcome to Heavy Contrast, a series of videos where I show you how to paint amazing models using just contrast, type paints and highlights. And for this second installment of the series, sponsored by Corvus Belli, we are going to paint another Infinity model, and in particular we are going to paint the absolutely stunning Longwan Imperial Tag Police from the Jing faction with a very special orange-yellow armor and some super easy to do green OSL details. So without further ado, let's get cracking. As you can see, we are starting from a base coat of, well, a zenithal, and this was done using the airbrush, obviously, and I used Warlord Purple from Gamer and white over a primer of Wraithbone spray. But if you don't have an airbrush, this is also easy to do and you can get something very close. The only thing you have to do is start with Wraithbone, do a layer of deep purple, any kind of pinkish color will do, and then you take the Wraithbone spray again and spray it from the top. That's it. But obviously the airbrush lets you do a couple more targeted approaches and, you know, a finer work overall. And for our first layer, it's going to be Yanden yellow. I chose Yanden because it's quite orange, which is going to work for us to get that amazing look of the faction. The combination of airbrush base coats and contrast paints makes honestly for probably the best base coat you can get to start painting your models. It just gives you so much more than just a normal base coat. Remember to absorb any excess where you don't want it. We don't want this to pull too much. We want a little bit obviously, but not too much. With the yellow contrast now fully dry, and for the next step I'm going to paint all of the black details. This model basically is composed of a yellow, a light gray, a dark blue gray and a black. I'm going to concentrate on the black first, and for that I'm going to pick up all of the parts that are going to be black using Mechanicus Standard Gray. This will ensure we get a deep black. I want to make sure that all of the colors differentiate themselves from one another, and I want the black to be very dark. Seems to be mostly these interconnecting things, these tubes, kind of mechanical muscles. This is the things that I'm going to be picking up. With all the parts picked that are going to be black, I can now apply the black contrast on top of them to make them really black. And for that I'm just going to use Black Templar. I like Black Templar for this because it has a cool tone that is going to contrast fantastically well with the yellow. And I might even go with this over the parts that are not going to be black, just on the outlines and stuff like that, so I can have a clear line for later on and hopefully a cleaner application of the next paints. With the black applied and almost dry, it's not perfect but I can fix all of the mistakes later. It's time to base coat the other colors, and for all of those I'm going to use Corax White. And I know I painted this yellow with the intention of keeping it yellow, but I think going with the boxshot color is going to be better. So I changed my mind and I'm going to paint it now with Corax. As before, the most important thing is preserving the yellow. So that should be our #1 objective. All that base coating is done, and it took a long time, but it's finally over and we can move on. It's time to paint the light gray details, and for this I'm going to use a mix of 2 parts Wicked Purple and 1 part Starship Steel. And I chose this because, well, it's going to give me a pretty cool looking gray that is fairly neutral, but it's also made with colors instead of just gray, which is going to provide a more interesting finish. Sort of like a chromatic black, but for grays. And with the light gray applied, it's time to move on to the darker blue gray. And for that, I'm going to use Black Lotus. When you're using Black Lotus, one thing you need to make sure is that you have your Black Lotus really well mixed. I have a lot of people complaining that it's too shiny, it's too blue, and it is very blue, that's for sure, but if you mix it well, it shouldn't be that blue. I'm going to apply it, remove the excess so we can see all of the details. And with the Black Lotus applied, you can see how beautiful, like dark blue, gray it is. It's a fantastic color. With that applied, if you want to stop here, this is a very respectable Jing color scheme and a recipe that you can follow if you just want like a tabletop level model. But of course, I'm going to show you how you can elevate this to the next level. And with all those contrast layers now fully dry, it's time to highlight this, and I'm going to start with the black details because, well, they get a lot in the way and I prefer to do all of the messy stuff, all of the stuff that could damage the yellow first, and then if I need to fix it, I can. So to start with that, I'm going to do a dry brush, and for the dry brush I'm going to use my favorite dry brushes, the ARTIFY. You will find an affiliate link in the description, and I'm going to use these two, the 5 and the 3. I'm going to do white for the dry brush, and then I will do another layer of the contrast on top to get a super cool highlight. We get most of the paint off. I'm going to use the large dry brush for the stuff like the gun, which is very large, and for the small details, I'm going to move on to the super tiny dry brush. The idea here is to get a cheeky, quick edge highlight and then tone it down with the contrast paint to get a lot of modulation. Works really well and is very easy to do. And now that we have all of the dry brush done, we can do another layer of contrast. We use Black Templar and we're going to use the same color, but this time I'm going to thin it down 1:1 with Express Medium. You can just use Contrast Medium if you don't want to buy Express Medium, it's alright. I just prefer Express Medium because it gives a flatter finish and it makes the paint go on nicer in my opinion. The only thing we want with this layer is to soften those edge highlights with white and give us a super nice look. With the black temporary finish, again we will do one more highlight, but that can wait. It's time to tackle the white. The white looks alright, but I want to add a bit more shading, and for this I'm just going to use Wicked Purple. I'm going to apply Wicked Purple, this time instead of an all over, a targeted shade, and I'm going to apply it and feather it out very carefully. I want to increase the shading on the white areas a little bit, but just on the right places, because I want this to look sort of NMM-ish. I'm going to focus on the upper sections of each volume. I might do a couple layers of this, I'm still not sure, but it's just a simple matter of increasing the contrast by adding a bit more shade. With that extra shading done, we can move on to highlighting, and I'm going to start with Silver Grey. For the white, I'm just going to focus on doing a very straight and simple edge highlight. In some parts, I might do a slightly highlight like this, just to emphasize that metallic look. And doing this on the opposite side, I did the shading. And for the final highlight on the white, I'm just going to use white. And this is going to be a very simple step because the only thing I'm going to do is emphasize what I've done before. Now that the white is finished, I'm going to tackle the black, and I'm going to do something very simple, which is a single highlight using pale gray blue. I'm just going to pick the sharpest corners and edges, just anything that would be facing the source of light, just to make it stand out. And if you mess it up like I did here, you can always go back to the Black Templar and smooth out some of the imperfections. This is very simple and it's just to bring the weapon and the black details to the same level of work and finesse, more or less, as the rest of the model, so they don't stand out in a bad way. With the white and the black now done, it's time I'm going to focus now on this bluish navy blue kind of sections, and for this I'm going to use a 1-to-1 mix of Thunderhawk blue and pale grey blue. And for the armor of this model, I want to make it really worn down, like it seems some action. So for that, first of all, I'm going to pick the edge highlights, obviously, as thin as I can make them, but don't worry too much if they don't come out perfect, because weathering hides all the crimes. So I'm just going to do some scratches, some dots, and all this goodness. For the shoulder sections, which have some graphics over them, there are several options. My preferred one will always be sketch out the freehand first and then do the highlighting. And for the white freehand, my preferred color will always be Corax white. It just covers like a dream. A good tip on doing freehand is to always try to do vertical lines from top to bottom. That's what comes easier for humans, and that's my recommendation unless you are some kind of alien. In that case, you should ask a painter from your own species. The freehand is now done, and if you want to use the original Black Lotus to weather the freehand, feel free to do so. And for the next highlight, I'm going to use pale grey blue again. First of all, as a thin edge highlight, and also doing some weathering here and there, but it's mostly going to be just edge highlight, but we can do sort of a broken edge highlight to make it look like it's chipped. There you go, super cool. Instead, you can use some of the Black Lotus to weather the freehand down and make it look scratched. You have to be very minimal with this, or you run the risk of losing the integrity. I will finish all of the navy blue details later on. I just want to show you how to paint it. If the freehand touches some of these highlight areas, like a corner or an edge, I'm just going to use pure white, and we can use a mix of white and pale grey blue to make the final highlight on these details. Yeah, super cool. I love doing weathering model. I love doing models that look weathered. It just makes it up for an amazing look. With the marine blue finish and looking pretty good, I'm very happy with how they turned out. I like them so much that I did all of them. It's time to tackle the orange yellow armor, and I'm going to start highlighting all of the dark part using sunset orange. I'm going to use this sunset orange on the dark details as an edge highlight, but also, as I've been doing, and because this faction kind of lends itself to being a little bit more weathered, at least I kind of have that feeling. I want to paint them like that. I'm going to add some scratches and some damage. It also makes it so much easier to paint because we don't have to worry about being spotless. So we can just be a little bit more aggressive and have a lot more fun. I'm going to start with an edge highlight until the point where more or less this color disappears, just like that. And I'm going to add some weathering. And if I want to do a volumetric highlight in some details, for example, on the top here, I'm just going to do it with weathering. And for the rest, I'm just going to keep on adding these scratches and damage. And for the next highlight, I'm going to do a 50-50 mix of sunset orange and ice yellow. And this time I am going to highlight the top sections. And I'm going to keep on doing the same kind of job. If you don't like weathering, you can just do this, I don't know, using glazes or something like that. But I want to do it like this. I think it adds a lot of interest, and it's also a good method to make each faction a little bit different. So for me, this faction Jing is going to be the weathered one. So I'm going to do a lot of chipping and scratches and all of that on their models, and I think it's going to look awesome. And for the final highlight, I'm just going to use pure ice yellow. And I'm going to concentrate this on the edges and most prominent details. After those highlights are done, if I want to reintroduce some of the yellow tones that might have been gone after this desaturated highlight, I can always use a Yanden yellow again, but this time thinned down into a very thin glaze, and I can apply it wherever I want to resaturate the areas. There's still more armor to paint, but I will do that off camera. I just wanted to do this section so I could show you how to do the glowing green details. That will be the last thing we will do in this tutorial, and I think it's going to look incredible. So what I did is base coat all of those areas using Corax White, and now I'm going to apply a layer of warp lining on top. And with the warp lining, I'm also covering some of the surrounding with it, so we start getting that green tint, not just on the holes, it's also on the edges surrounding them. With the warp lining dry, it's time to start adding the glowing effect. I'm going to start by using a Scorpy green. If you don't have Vallejo, mood green is basically the same color, but I do prefer the vibrancy of Scorpy green. I'm going to paint all of the inner details with this, all of the glowing lights. I'm trying not to pick up any of the recesses, or I mean the edge of the recess, if that makes any sense. For the smaller details, I'm not going to use this color, it's not necessary. And for the next step, I'm just going to jump straight onto yellow-green. Again, right in the center. I don't want to do like a super exaggerated OSL. I just want this to look like it's slightly glowing in daylight. As you can see, I'm trying to preserve that dark outline on the recesses, on the edge of the recess of each of these holes, so that the light effect is more convincing. If you have a dark edge between your part and your glowing detail, the glowing detail looks brighter and more realistic. Yellow-green is such a fantastic paint. One of my favorites from the model color range. And finally, I'm going to use a mix. I'm going to use a 1-to-1 mix of ice yellow and yellow green. You can just use straight up ice yellow. But I kind of like to add that slightly bit of green. So this is the finished Long Wang Imperial TAC Police. It was an incredible pleasure to paint, and I'm super happy with how this very weird and very particular yellow-orange turned out in my finished model. I'm really happy with it, and I also hope you liked the process, and I really hope you use this in your Ying faction or whatever model you want to paint. Thank you for watching, and thank you to all the amazing people whose names you see scrolling down the screen. Without them, I couldn't do this, literally. So, thank you from all my heart, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye!